Welcome back to the IU427 Garage, everybody. Today we're working on fixing our wiper system on the Mark IV prototype and also putting on some power steering hose, clamps, clips. I think we're also going to get around to getting the wheels installed for the final time, but I think I'm going to go ahead and set ride height as well because with all the messing around we've done, I want to check the ride height. It looks to me like it's come down just a little bit. The springs have settled, so we're going to take care of that and get this thing back up where it's supposed to be. All right, the wiper frustration has reached an all-time high. But what I found was, after sleeping on it overnight, was that the best way to take the wiper system out was to do it all in one piece. And that way, I'd be less likely to get grease all over the engine compartment, the underside of the body, myself, and everything else, and it'd be easier to work it on over on the bench. So I did that. Basically what I did was I took the wiper arms off, I loosened the nuts on each of the wheel boxes, and I kind of threaded them down back through their holes. And then over on this side of the car where the motor is, what I did was I took that strap loose. So there's a like a bolt that goes through to tighten that strap, and I took the nut off, and there's a barrel inside of that mechanism. So you got to be careful you don't lose that as you pull everything apart. And then there's that oval kind of formed washer underneath the nut. So just carefully pull all that stuff apart. And then what I did is I took a thin blade screwdriver and I kind of pried the whole clamp apart. Any of my electrical buddies out there will know, you know, this strap is nothing more than a glorified Mineralac strap for conduit. So you can kind of gently pry it on both sides and get it to open up enough that you can pull the motor out the front. Now, before I did all this, I wanted to make sure that I took a picture of the wiring. So the wiring that's in here, I wanted to make sure that I put it back in the same orientation. So anybody that had a comment or a question on the previous video about I wired it wrong, well, honestly, that's impossible. I couldn't have wired it wrong because it worked perfectly every other time that I tested the wipers until I put the wiper arms on. So it was wired right basically from the beginning. What we had trouble with before we even put the system in the car was that the motor wouldn't self-park with no cables, with no tubing, no wiper arms, nothing. It would just, as soon as you hit the switch, it would stop in whatever position that the cable was in at that time. And so there is actually, and I'm going to link it in the description box, there's that little white box on the side of the wiper motor that all the wiring goes into. Well, on the internal side of that, the side that rests against the wiper motor, there is a plunger switch. That plunger switch was what we were having trouble with. It was not engaging properly on the contacts inside, and they are a simple mechanical, it's like a copper strap inside of that switch mechanism. And so the terminal, or the what do we want to call that thing? The it's just a long terminal. It's like a long blade. And it wasn't making contact with the actual contact that self-parks the motor when it gets down to a particular position. And so even though on its rotation, the contact plunger would hit the part inside the motor that was supposed to engage the self-park mechanism, it just wasn't making contact. And so we opened that up and we bent that contact in order for it to make connection. And when I bent it, I must have just bent it just a hair too much. And so it was fine during all the tests that we made pre-wiper blades. But as soon as I put the wiper blades on, there was enough force in the wiper mechanism as it hit the contact, it re-engaged the self-park and it would go another revolution. And if you listen closely to the end of the last video where we had the trouble, you'll hear this knocking. Now that knocking was the basically the play in the cable. And so what I did was I ended up doing a complete tune-up on the wiper system. So on the wheel boxes, what I did was I tightened up the back stop for the gear so that there was less up and down play in the shaft that the wiper arms attached to. And so I tightened all that up. And then what I went and did as I put it all back in the car is I made sure that I oriented the tubing again so it was the most smooth and straight from one wheel box to the other, and then from that wheel box down to the motor. So there was less chance of everything binding. And then this time what I did was I got both of the wheel boxes lined up first, and then I adjusted the height of the motor housing so that so there was no question that I had the most smooth transition from the motor to the first wheel box. Now I can't say for certain that that was the problem, because when I opened up the white contact box, I noticed that it was making contact, but the contact was really tight against the self-park mechanism. So it could have been a combination of both. It could have just been that contact switch inside the wire housing for the motor. But since I had it apart, it just made sense to go through everything and make sure everything was working properly. Now, if I go ahead and I hit the wipers, they should self-park. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna turn the switch, and on this one, it doesn't matter if it's on accessory or if it's on ignition, and then hit the switch, and the wipers work. And when we turn them off, they park. So even the sound of the wipers now sounds better. Meaning, one, since we have everything apart again, it could be that now everything's very well lubricated and there's no binding in the system. And the contact inside of the motor itself is not having an issue with the cam that's in there. Basically, they call it a bridge. And it's just this, it's like this bump. It's like a hill inside of the back of the gear that plunger hits when it goes into the self-park. And the self-park only allows it one revolution and shuts it off. Well, for whatever reason, there was enough stress in the cable, in the tubing, or whatever, that it was causing that thing to stick, I think. But not wanting to take a chance, I re-clearanced the contact in the motor housing where the switch resides, the plunger, and I redid all of the cabling and the tubing to make sure that everything was tight, everything was lined up, and now everything is working properly. Now, there was a question recently on either one of the Facebook pages or one of the forums. And I want to make sure you guys understand. Now, not all the wipers are the same. Some of them are different. I've seen some guys have wiper arms that have set screws on them. The ones from Factory 5 do not. They have clips. You feel it with your finger. So what you do is you reach in there and you just kind of push up on that clip, and that will release the spring mechanism that is holding it against the splines of the actual hub that this mounts to. But that still doesn't help you get these things off. So if you have to get these off, you can buy a pair of these pliers, and you can see the end of them right here. They have like duck bills on them, and they are expansion pliers. So I bought these to rebuild transmissions, particularly T5s, but they work perfect for this because you can rest it in here against the base of the shaft housing and the actual outside, or that portion of the wiper arm and squeeze, and it will, you'll need 2 hands, push that off of the shaft, and you'll be able to get your wiper arms off. So that's just for anybody out there that has a question about getting their wiper arms off. So my next quest today is to get the transmission lines squared away, and I've got some clips that I think the owner picked up on Amazon. So I've got 2 different sizes here. I think I'm going to try the ones here. These say they're for AN4, but the inside diameter for these is like a 0.49, and the outside of our hoses is like 0.50. And so I'm going to try these first and try to use these to get our power steering lines kind of in order and strapped. And then if those don't fit, I bought actual AN6 size, which are a point like 5.4 to 5.9, they say. So with a combination of the 2 of these, I should be able to get those power steering lines all squared away. And then it's just going to be a matter of going through the car and nut and bolting the entire thing. So what I'll probably do is I'll bring you guys back. I'll show you how those clips or those straps went on. And then we'll walk through kind of what I do on a yearly basis for any car, but we're going to do this like we do for any car that we're going to be delivering as a pre-delivery, and nut and bolt the entire car. And then the last thing we'll do is probably put on the wheel spinners. All right, now we're going to be under the car, and I want to show you what these clips look like installed. Let's see if I can find one. There's one. So right up here, you can see that's what the clip looks like all done and finished. I've got another one right here, and then I've got a couple more of them up inside the engine compartment a little bit higher. So there's one right up there, and then one right back there. So all it's doing really is just keeping the power steering hoses in tandem. So keeping them together as a pair so that, and this will keep them all nice and neat. I do have one more on the passenger side that I put up in there just above the battery, and same thing. It's just basically to hold it in place. Now I do want to show you what they look like, and I have this one right here. This size ended up being perfect. So these were, I think, 0.49 on the inside diameter, and when you take the 2 halves, the 2 clamshell halves of it apart, and put them over the 2 hoses, then you just tighten them together with a set screw right there, and they worked out perfect. So I didn't use any of the larger ones, but I'll put those in the parts of stuff to go back with the car owner, and then he can have those for future use, or if he decides that he doesn't want them, we'll keep them here in the shop. Now, I've already worked on setting the ride height. So while I was in the front of the car getting those clamps in place, I went ahead and I brought the front of the car up. I think it was 2 full turns. So on the adjustment collars of the coilovers, I spun them around 2 turns, and I brought the front end of the car up, and now we are exactly at 4 inches off the frame rails to the ground, and we're at 4.5 inches in the back, which, if you remember, is where we set the car up when we corner weighted it and we did our initial alignment. So now it's right back to where it was. Now, this has very little to do with the body. This has more to do with just the springs kind of settling in to where they need to be. And because honestly, the body doesn't weigh that much. It's only a couple 100 pounds. And so, you know, even that with the seats and some other stuff, I mean, you're only dealing with a few 100 pounds of extra stuff on the car. But because, you know, the car moves in and out, and, you know, it's been around the block here at the shop a few times to make sure that, you know, everything's working properly, the settling just happens in the springs. And that's true with even more so with the factory 5 springs than it is with the iBox springs. So for us to just have to go 2 turns up in the back and the front was perfect. So I think we're right back where we need to be on the ride height. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get the car down. I'm gonna get the wheels off, and I'm gonna start working on making sure that everything in the wheel wells. So when I'm in the front wheel well on the driver's side, I'm gonna make sure that everything's tied up inside there. I'll cross that off my list. Then I'll go to the passenger side. I'll make sure everything's tied over there, cross that off my list, and so on. I'm just gonna go around the four corners of the car, make sure everything's tight for all of the coilovers, all the suspension components, all that kind of stuff, and make sure everything's where it needs to be before we put the wheels on for what I hope is the final time. So once we get ready to do that, we'll cut some pieces of pool noodle, about 2 inches long. And those will be behind our center caps, and that acts kind of as a spring. Those just kind of hold the center cap in place, so the spinners can go on, and you're not fighting having to try to hold the center cap out as you're trying to thread the spinner on. But I'll go through that kind of once we finish that, and I'll show you exactly how we did it and what we did to get all that stuff on. And then the last thing I'm gonna do in this video anyways, is I'm just gonna go from the back of the car to the front of the car underneath and make sure again that everything that can be tightened is tight, and that we don't have any loose ends underneath the car. And then as I go and detail the car, probably in the next video, we'll make sure we do the same thing in the engine compartment, because we don't want anything that, you know, is loose in there to rattle loose, like, you know, something on the intake system, and find out that the car won't start. We're gonna make sure that we've got all that stuff tightened up underneath the car, and just make sure that we don't need to go back and do anything else under the car. Good news, everybody. I didn't find anything inside that wheel well that was loose or not where it's supposed to be. I managed to get everything pretty much cleaned up in there. So you can see, I wiped down all the panels, wiped down the side of the radiator, all the tubing, all that stuff. I've got the wheel center cap in, and you can see it's somewhat rigid with that piece of pool noodle behind it, so it's not gonna move as we try to get the tri-spinner and the trim plate that covers up the lugs on there. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna move on to the rest of the wheels. I'll bring you guys back. I think the last thing I'm probably gonna do this week anyway is nut and bolt the entire bottom side of the car. You know, it's funny, I was looking at the weights on the car here. Let's see if I can see them. Okay, they're back in there. I don't know. Let's see if we get some light in there. So you can see it's got the tape weights. And so the trick that I use is I put foil tape over them just so that they stay there for a good long time. And here's the other side. You can see that behind the caliper there. Yeah, you can see them right there. Okay, so I'm not happy, because to me, high performance tires shouldn't need this much weight. But then I got to this back tire, and this back tire is freaking ridiculous. I mean, how much weight can you put on one tire, right? That's a lot of freaking weight. But wait, there's more. There's more weight over here. Now, how is a high performance tire that far out of weight? Are you telling me that it's the wheels? Because over here on this one, now this is the driver's side rear. I challenge you to find a weight on that entire wheel. There is not a weight on this wheel. So this tire over here didn't need any weight and was perfectly balanced. And that one over there had all the weight that I showed you. I mean, there must be what, 9 ounces of weight over on that side? Because each of those tape weights is a quarter ounce. So this is ridiculous. And this isn't the first set of tires that we've gotten, like that were part of the package deal from Factory 5, where they mount and balance your tires and ship them with your kit, which I think it's a really bad idea for all you guys out there building. Get your wheels from them. If you want factory 5 wheels, get your wheels from them, but don't have any tires mounted, because those tires are going to sit in your shop the entire time that you're building your car. And the tires have date codes on them. This car was sitting, well, not really sitting. The owner had put quite a bit of work into it before he decided that he wanted to have us finish it. But still, these tires are 3 years old. And you only get 5 to 6 years out of a set of tires before the date codes, you know, basically tell you not to be using the tires anymore. So I'm not a fan of getting wheels and tires mounted and balanced from factory 5 when you order a kit. Get your wheels. Wait to get your actual wheels and tires balanced and all that stuff. You know, purchase your tires after, you know, like when you're ready to get on the road. The best way to do this is to find yourself a set of takeoff wheels from, a late model Mustang. There's always somebody on Facebook trying to get rid of a set of 5-lug Ford wheels and tires. Put those on your car for the time being to roll it around the shop if you're intent on getting it on 4 wheels. But you don't even have to do that. I mean, until you're ready to get the thing down to paint, you don't need to move it. You know, just leave it up on the stands, or, you know, in this case, leave it up on the lift. I just put wheels on it because I've got an extra set here. You know what I'm saying? So I had to show you guys that. And then, of course, you know, the guys on Facebook immediately. I show using a little piece of pool noodle to put behind the hub to keep it in place while you put your spinner on. Everybody's got a better way. Well, I'll tell you what, you keep your better way and you do it your way, and I'll do my little pool noodle trick, and I'll do it my way, and we'll all just stay happy. How about that? I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, everybody, next day, last day, I hope, for this video, but I'm under the car, and I'm going to go through the entire bottom section of the car and nut and bolt everything. So this is probably the last time you're going to have. I mean, you can always go back again. However, before you start using your car on the road, you're going to want to make sure that all of these nuts and bolts are tight. So, you know, nuts and bolts like this for the sway bar, the bolts that hold the coilovers in. These have adjustable control arms, so we're going to want to make sure the stop nuts are tight. The drive shaft bolts, we're going to want to make sure that those are tight. You've got some hardware over here that holds a 3-link assembly in. So you're going to want to make sure that that bolt is tight. You're going to want to make sure that the bolt's tight here for your pannered bar, your sway bar end links. All of this stuff back here that you want to make sure everything is tight. While you're back here, check all your fuel lines. Make sure you don't have any leaks. We're going to go ahead, since this car came to us, and I think I told you all when the owner was bringing us out, he went through torrential rains on the way out here. So there are water spots on the underside of our chassis up there. We're going to wipe all that down. We're going to get everything nice and clean while we're under here. But this is one of the last chance you're going to have to inspect this stuff before you put the car on the road. And so what I do is, like I did the front wheel caps last night, I'm going to do the rear wheel caps tonight. And I'm just going to work my way from the back of the car back to the front and just methodically go through and check every nut and bolt that I can see under the car to make sure that everything's tight. Now, in many cases, you're not going to need to get out your torque wrench. I mean, you can honestly get out your torque wrench and you can put, you know, your torque wrench on there and check the torque of everything. But at this point, it's gonna be pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty obvious if something's loose. So what you want to do is get a wrench on it, make sure it's tight. Just pull some pressure against it. If you've got witness marks, paint mark on all your hardware, and you know you tighten those and the marks still line up, then you're good.
if you've noticed that something's moved one way or the other, make sure you get a wrench on that bolt and make sure it's tight. So this isn't anything that you guys probably don't already know, but it's just a gentle reminder that before you start putting miles on your car on the road, make sure that everything is tight underneath the car. Like I said, we're going to be detailing this thing in the next video, and so we'll check everything under hood in the next video, because I'll be under the hood anyways, getting everything cleaned up. I'm going to make sure that, again, our fuel lines are all tight, all of the bolts that hold the engine in, and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to make sure all that stuff is good. But I think that's going to wrap this one up. So sorry for the sidetrack at the beginning with the wipers. Those wipers just turned into an absolute nightmare. I mean, they're a nightmare to begin with, and then having the trouble that we had with them just made it even worse. So I'm hoping that we've put all that behind us and they're gonna work perfectly from here on out. If you're enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.